This is the Live Like Warriors podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kenny. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's get right into it. What's up, guys? I'm so excited that you tuned into the Live Like Warriors podcast. And really what I want to do is just kind of share my heart here on this first one and kind of let you guys know where I'm coming from. And I'm very honored that you'd take the time to actually hear what I have to say. But that's probably the very first thing that I want to get across. I am not here to just teach thinking I'm Socrates or that I've got all the answers to life. I'm not here to motivate. I'm not even here to inspire. I'm not here to, again, teach. I'm really just here to share. And I have struggled with one major question over the last couple of years. And as I've kind of started to do a lot more speaking engagements and created more content, and I get asked a lot, okay, so what is the problem you're trying to solve, Bryce? And why are you qualified to solve it? And it's been a really difficult question for me to answer until about a month ago. Because everything I've done, if I've done pieces of content or I put videos together on YouTube or I've put speeches together, talks together for conferences or events or men's retreats, things like that, I have continued to go back and a lot of that content is somewhat broad because it's like all these tips and tricks I've learned along the way. And here's what I've come to realize, that what I'm passionate about is not to teach and just to talk to people to try to convince them to change. I am wanting people, everything I do and the way I think about life is simply helping all of us to shift into another gear, shifting into a gear that maybe we didn't even know that we had. And I realized that what I've done over the last probably 10 years of my life, I've gotten really good at shifting gears. That's it. I don't have everything figured out. I don't have the secret to life or I don't have the perfect clarity around the meaning of my life and your life and things like that. I simply have gotten extremely good at getting out of neutral and into first, from first to second, second to third, leveraging one opportunity to the next, and just kind of figuring it out as I go. Well, as I look back, there are a lot of things that I've come to realize that are very helpful steps in that process to do, and I want to share those. So, of course, this episode we're going to title it "Shift" and finding that gear you didn't know you had. And everything that you come on here on this podcast to listen to, it's going to help you do just that. And my passion is meeting people where they are. Okay, where you are currently today, you might be in third gear, fourth gear, whatever. You might be stuck in neutral. I think most of us are. Like we've kind of become professionals at yawning. Like that's probably the worst indictment you could ever have for, to describe your own life is that, is you just yawn all the time. And I felt like that's where I was about 12 years ago. And I'm going to share kind of what got me out of neutral on that. But I think 90% of people walking around on the earth are kind of stuck in neutral. But whether you're in neutral or second gear or 10th gear, looking for 11th gear, I want to be a help to helping you to find that next gear that you may not even know that you had yet. And that is exactly what problem I'm trying to solve. And I'm qualified to do it because I've gotten very good at finding my own next gear. And I'm in the middle of that right now. So this isn't something where I'm just coming at you, giving you a bunch of theories. I'm coming from a position of, I'm in the position now of shifting. Okay. I'm always looking for that next gear. What else can I leverage? What opportunity can I build into the next one? Looking for that gear that I don't even know that I have yet. Okay. So I'm in the battle. I'm in the hunt with you. All right. Well, it was about 12 years ago. I really got kind of booted out of neutral, to be honest. And it started with getting fired. Now, it's hard for me to admit that this is part of my story because I've always been a good employee. I've always been passionate about bringing value. And I've always had, good skill sets and, everyone always said, oh, you're a natural leader, you're a born leader, all this stuff. And it used to annoy me in middle school. And I get what they were saying back then, but to me, even today, it's like to get fired and you're somebody that, has a tendency to lead. That just doesn't seem to add up unless you make some big mistake, which I didn't. And I was working at North Carolina Youth Soccer Association. And this is basically the organization that runs all of club soccer in the state of North Carolina. Okay. My job was to administer the recreation, which is 88 clubs. And I think we had almost, I want to say we had almost 45,000 players in the state of North Carolina playing recreation soccer. That seems very, very high. But that's the numbers that's hitting my head. The other part of my job, the other half of my job was discipline and appeals, meaning if a player got a red card, got kicked out, or we had parents that got in a fight on the sidelines and there needed to be disciplinary action taken against them, I was the one to administer that. Now, I wouldn't just hand down punishments, but what would happen is if someone wanted to appeal that disciplinary action, then we would basically convene a hearing, where they would come in and we would have 3 volunteers from the different organizations that would come in, and they'd basically be our jury. They would hear the case. I was the one that would run the meetings and get us from point A to point B to point C. And I loved it. I thought it was so much fun, and I was good at it. Well, I walked into work one Monday, and we had our staff meeting, normally just as boring as could be. And I was sitting in my office afterwards, and the executive director, Kathy, walks in. She says, "Hey, Bryce, can I see you for a second?" And I'd been working here for a couple of years now. I want to say maybe, let's call it 2.5. So I sat down in her office. When I sat down, the president of North Carolina Youth Soccer, his name was Keith, he was standing there. And that was very odd. So he only came in for meetings and things. It was a voted upon elected position that he held. And so he was the president of the board of North Carolina Youth Soccer, and he had say in hiring and firing, but he normally wasn't there for the hiring or the firing, if that ever happened. So I certainly wasn't even prepared. He just started off, "Bryce, we've decided, it's come to our attention, and we've decided that you are no longer on board with the strategic direction of our organization, and your employment here is terminated effective immediately." I sat there stunned. I looked back across the desk at Kathy, our executive director, who would not look at me in the eyes. She just stared down at her desk. Keith was this large man. I'm not exaggerating. He's at least back then, he was about 400 pounds. And he was a narcissist. He was extremely insecure. Like, I remember him getting mad at the fact that he ordered no pickles on his Chick-fil-A sandwich, and it came with pickle residue. And he just flipped out about that. He also was very upset when we put him in the neighboring hotel instead of the hotel where the rest of the NCU soccer employees were, because he demanded a king bed. And there were no king rooms available at the rest of the hotel where the rest of the employees were. And he flipped out about that. He thought no one wanted to be around him and all this stuff. And I just remember thinking, what a child. But obviously he and I didn't really get along. So when I look back across the desk at the two of them, and of course he was standing off to the side there, probably about, 8 feet away from me, I said, "Just exactly why do you think that I'm not seeing the strategic direction of this organization?" And they said, "Well, it's, you haven't come on, you're not on board with this." They just basically gave all this generic information and generic answers. I say it was just Keith. Kathy still wouldn't look at me. And it wasn't an answer. I said, "Guys, I'm not leaving here until you can tell me, why am I being fired?" And then Keith changed his tone, because he wanted a fight. He's like, throwing a steak to a lion is what that was, questioning him. And he said, "You will leave, or we will call the police and have you escorted out of this building." And now all of a sudden he steps over towards me right beside my chair. Okay. And again, very large physical stature. And as if he wanted to pick me up by the arm and throw me out of that building. That's what I thought he was getting ready to do. So immediately I start wanting to diffuse the situation. I stand up, I walk away from him, and I start asking, I said, "What am I supposed to say to my wife?" Mackenzie and I had just gotten married probably 6 months previous to this. And I said, "How in the world am I supposed to explain this to her?" And I'm getting mad too, right? And so then he starts getting he starts pointing his finger and hollering at me. And then I start, getting upset with him too, and trying to find some common ground, because I still wanted answers. And then finally it just derailed, and we knew that there was no answers going to be given, and it was time for me to leave. So I stormed out of the office, went and grabbed my jacket, stormed out of the building, and that was it. But I was so embarrassed, and I thought to myself, how could I let this happen? Where I had all of a sudden I had created this comfortable life for myself. I had just come out of my top fuel drag racing pursuit, my dream, everything I had pushed in my life to go and do. This was my job after all of that failed. basically. So I got out of drag racing, and then this was my first real big boy job. And all of a sudden I started liking the comfort of it. I liked getting to work and going and getting coffee, right, from the back break room. Sitting down there at my desk and kind of checking my emails but what bothered me, I remember one night I had gotten home and I was looking forward to 6 p.m. because that's when The Big Bang Theory came on. And I remember almost building my life around this, 9 to 5 job, getting home by 6, eating some sort of dinner while I watched a TV show. And I remember at one point, it really kind of made me sick to my stomach that I had gotten so comfortable. And then all of a sudden, as I was pursuing that and trying to give my all for this job, I get fired. Now, here's looking back, it still doesn't make sense to me that I got fired. And I shouldn't have, because I was very good at both of those jobs. But I stopped believing in coincidences a long time ago. So here's a cool story. The Friday before I got fired, okay, I received a call from a guy named Chad. Chad was the president of an executive recruiting firm called Charles Harris, and it was based out of Greensboro, North Carolina. He was apparently in one of my recreation training seminars a couple weeks prior to that. And he called me and he said, Bryce, hey, I just want to tell you thanks again. I was in the training seminar, and I was just so impressed on how you ran it and how you spoke and held yourself and communicated. And I don't want to get in the way of anything. If you're wanting to kind of be a head coach at UNC Greensboro or something like that, I don't want to stop you or get in your way or hinder you from that. But if you're open to other opportunities, I'd really like to speak with you about my search firm, what we do, and maybe see if it's something that could fit with you career-wise. And I thought, well, I'm not looking for anything, Chad, but it never hurts to talk. And so we scheduled something for that following Wednesday. All right. So he called me on Friday. We set up something for Wednesday. 2 days later was that Monday that I get fired. And so I go home and I beat Mackenzie to the house for once, and she finally gets home from her job, and both of us were making like $27,000 a year each. And she said, "Why are you home already?" Right? And I was like, "Well, I got good news and I got bad news. The bad news is I just got fired." And all of a sudden tears started to well up in her eyes. I said, "The good news is I've got a meeting with this search firm this coming Wednesday. So I've already got something set up." And so, we both kind of freaked out and figuring out, okay, we just started this life together. How we're going to pay our bills? Are we going to be homeless all of a sudden? We've only been married for 6 months. But I go on Wednesday. I meet with Chad. It goes really well. We set up a full slate of interviews a week later for that following Wednesday. I go into that one, go through all the interviews. They call me that evening and offer me the job. And they said, "Hey, is there any way you could start this coming Monday?" And so when I got fired from NCU soccer, they gave me a 2-week severance because I think that's how much vacation time I actually had built up. And so ultimately, after I got the job offer from Charles Harris Executive Search and started that next Monday, I never even missed a paycheck. And so I say that to say, when I think back about this, and I had an 8th grade teacher that used to say, "Coincidence or providence, you be the judge." I absolutely believe that this was a providential hand of God in my life at this moment, who basically took the decision out of my hands. Because I was not in a position in life where I had a very strong appetite for risk at all. I really had no appetite for risk. I had just gotten married. We just started our life together. And to me, I think had I not got fired, I get worried of the fact that I may have said no to that executive search job, ultimately going through that interview process, because I had a lot of flexibility in the NC youth soccer. I knew soccer. I knew the world of soccer. That's what I came up doing. And running those 2 jobs. And it allowed me to go and be a coach in the evenings and do some other things like that. And I don't know that I would have left NCU soccer. And that scares me to think, because Charles Harris Executive Search was by far the best professional development I've ever had. I spoke with CFOs and CEOs all day. I learned what private equity was. I learned how the corporate environment worked. And now today, even with Monster Jam, right, I have developed this skill set now where I could go into any boardroom in America and I can feel confident, right? I could speak to them. I spent 3.5 years doing that in executive recruiting and doing it successfully, right? So there's that confidence and that communication style that now I use today in Monster Jam. And so think about that. Back at NCYSA, I had no appetite for risk. I felt like I was stuck in neutral though. I really wasn't using my skill sets. I started to develop it. I got fired, and that shifted me, whether I wanted to or not. It shifted me out of neutral and into first gear. And I went through executive recruiting. All of a sudden, man, I shifted gears probably 3 or 4 times during that job with my skill sets and my strengths. All of a sudden, I was developing and learning how the corporate environment worked. And then when I shifted again to Monster Jam, I got to leverage all those skill sets I had developed into this brand new arena called Monster Jam. And here I am with Monster Jam getting to kind of shift again 3 or 4 different times. So I don't know what gear I'm in today. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm still with you shifting. I'm still trying to find that next gear. We're in the same exact boat. But I've realized that there are really 3 things. If you go on my Instagram bio, I've got these 3 things listed. And actually, I listed them at the beginning of our little podcast intro there. But it's take more risks, have more faith, and be more creative. And I would challenge you, if you're listening to this, I would challenge you on these 3 areas specifically. Because your appetite for risk will determine your ability to shift out of neutral or to shift into this next gear that you're not even sure that you've got right now. Okay? Reevaluate and just be cognizant of your level of risk. You don't have to become Warren Buffett to find this next opportunity for yourself, to shift into something, to have better relationships at home, to be better at your job, whatever it might be, to find that next opportunity. You don't have to just be completely oblivious to the risks out there or your appetite, but you do need to understand where you're at now. And if on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 4, then what can you do today and tomorrow to get yourself to a 5? Because all opportunities carry risk with it. And if you're going to shift and you're going to do this next big thing in your life, you're going to have an increased amount of risk. Number 2 is have more faith. When people hear the word faith, they think of religion, they think of spiritual, and faith is really not either of those things. The thing about, I would say Christianity, if you open up the Bible, if you read through the New Testament, it's riddled with faith because that's what that belief set really entails. It's believing and acting upon something that you cannot physically see right in the here and now, in the present. That's what faith is. Now that could be, me driving to work one morning and having the faith I'm going to get there safely and all, because you're not sitting there thinking about the car that's coming on the on-ramp up in, 3 miles up the highway. You're already thinking about the emails and the work that you've got to do when you get to your office. You've got faith you're going to get there safely, right? And that's why you got in the car to begin with. And when we think about our lives, when we can see what we want, when we can refocus and reset our vision, and we can see the end result so clearly with our eyes closed, using our imagination and choosing to believe rather than doubting, and that becomes so clear, it becomes as real as what we're seeing or not seeing when our eyes are actually physically open. That's the level of faith that I want to run at. I want to have more faith. I want to see what's coming in the present, though. I want to be able to see it now. And the only way to do that is to become so committed in seeing that in my own mind and having the faith to know that not only can it happen, it's going to happen, and understand and already almost living in the results. Okay. And we're going to talk about all this stuff a lot throughout these podcasts. But the last one is be more creative. And all 3 of these things are my personal challenges to myself. I want to be more creative. And one of the things that I've realized along the years is that my level of creativity is not an artistic one, okay? I've had to learn how to edit videos and get better with audio stuff and doing stuff like this, creating content and whatnot. And I've failed a lot at doing it the right way. And who knows, in 5 years, I might look back at this podcast and be ashamed. But the point being, I've got to be more creative in my solutions. And if we're going to find that next gear, sometimes we're going to have to be creative with finding that next path. And so what I would do is I would challenge anyone out there to reject the life of comfort, to reject chasing after happiness, to chase purpose, to believe rather than doubt, to create memories instead of egos, right? And I know that we all want peace, we want comfort, we want happiness, but sometimes you have to choose to fight through the unknown in those areas to get through the muck, to get through the stuff and all the shadows and all the difficulties that we all experience. Sometimes you have to choose to fight through that stuff, and you got to get creative at getting through it as well. And we're going to be talking about all 3 of those things along the way. And so I'm excited because when I think about what's next, not just for myself, but for anybody that's listening to this podcast, I would simply give you a phrase that I end all of my emails with, and I'm probably going to end all of my podcasts with, but it's see you on the battlefield. because to me, this life is not easy. This life is tough. It'll kick your butt. And all the quotes out there like Rocky, it's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit and get back up and keep going. No one hits harder than life. And to me, I love that part of Rocky, but it's Mike Tyson's quote that I go back to all the time. Everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the face. And if you're listening to this and you're plugging into the Live Like Warriors stuff and the content, the podcast that I'm putting out, it's probably because you want to hit back at life. And at some point you may have had a plan and you're ready to reset your plan. But all I'm asking you to do is not try to figure all this out, to reset your entire strategy and feel like you've got to wait to get all of the answers before you do something. All I'm asking you to do is have the cognitive ability and the patience with yourself to shift into the next gear, to find that next gear that you didn't even know that you had. And my role in all of this is I simply just want to help you do it because I'm in that same process of shifting as well. All right. So if I can help you, I want to engage with me, whether it's on social, whether it's, on our warrior chain. My vision is 5,000 people on our warrior chain because I want a coordinated effort. I want a volunteer army to go and make a real difference in this world and to make a big splash and huge ripple effects across this globe. And I see how 5,000 people can do that. And so I'm excited about this, and I'm in the battle with you. I'm in the hunt with you. I'm playing the game with you. And I'm excited that we're going to do this together. And so please engage with me. Let me know what else we can do as we're going along, but stay tuned because I've got some of the coolest content, some of the best interviews coming up, whether it's dealing and working and speaking and helping families going through trauma like pediatric cancer or medical issues or some other trauma that they're going through. And you always wondered, what do they actually need? We've got that podcast. Whether it's you struggling with what is really true out there and you've got this identity crisis, I've got some amazing stuff coming up, some amazing podcast episodes for you to plug into and stuff like taking risks. We've got amazing, not only just interviews and people that have taught me and pushed me and have sharpened me along the way, but people that get it, people that are aware of risk. And we're going to help you do those three things, man. We're going to help you take more risks. We're going to help you have more faith, and we're going to help you be more creative. And together we can really, really make a difference. Okay. So thanks guys for plugging in, and I will see you all on the battlefield. Thanks for listening to the Live Like Warriors podcast. Do us a favor and share this with one person today. You never know who desperately needs to hear this message. And don't forget to join our warrior chain at livelikewarriors.com. We'll see you on the battlefield.